This is the Heart to Heart with Statton podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry, we had some technical issues, but we're back now. What I was originally talking about is the difference between ignorance and willful ignorance, and how my take on it is the fact that that ignorance isn't necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there are things that we shouldn't be ignorant of, but where it starts to become a bad thing is when we choose to be ignorant of things. But unless you are all knowing, which can never happen, you're going to be ignorant of something. There's just no changing that. So, with that said, for example, if there's just something you don't want to learn, but it's something you should learn, that's willful ignorance. That's when ignorance becomes a bad thing. Now, with that said, I would like to turn it over to Liv and give her a second chance to say the things that she was going to say. But because of my stupidity, no one could hear her, but now here's her chance. Liv, what was it you were going to say now?
Well, just to add some context, I am a counselor, I'm a life coach, and I'm a quality of life specialist, and that's one of the reasons that I am on today. And I really liked the topic, ignorance versus willful ignorance. I thought it was a very clever topic to talk about today. And you're right, everyone is going to be ignorant of some things. You're not going to be all-knowing. But there is a very good reason that we tell people, hey, shoot for the moon, because even if you don't make it, you'll land amongst the stars. You should always try for more. And the world can take a lot of things from you. It can nearly take everything from you, but the world can never take away your skills. So learn as many as possible. It's not only wonderful for you and gives you a much better advantage in life, but it also increases the opportunity for all of those around you as well. Being able to have knowledge, but especially just share it, it's a very crucial skill set to even be able to teach other people the things you know, because it's great to know things, but if you can't show it to somebody else, it's still limiting. So it's definitely something you always want to strive for, is to learn as much as you can. And sometimes when people finish school, they go, okay, well, I've done the learning thing. I'm done now. I've reached my peak. I'm done. And then sometimes maybe you keep learning. But then you get to a certain age where you start saying things like, I've learned my whole life and I ain't going to learn no more. Well, you could learn how to properly, fix that sentence, because that's not correct. But you know what? That's okay. As long as we keep striving for more, we'll be all right. But it's when you say, nope, I don't want to, I'm done, this is all I need to know, that's when we can start becoming a burden on one another. And that's when we can start causing hurt feelings and gaps in our support system. And for myself especially, I hated learning how to use Discord. I couldn't stand learning how to use TikTok. Having to learn a new app as an adult just doesn't have the same fun it used to have when I was younger. So I don't want to be that person who has to call my kids to come over to my house and help me fix my hologram because I don't know what I'm doing. So I want to keep learning all the new technology as it rolls out, because that's important to me. And you never want to stop learning. But you're not going to know everything on this planet. But one of the best ways to learn is to just jump in and do. Just do it. Try it. If you mess up, you mess up. But that's one of the best ways to learn, is just hands-on learning. And there's a lot of things in this world I never thought I would say that, oh, I can do this now. But I can. Some of it's kind of different, or things that I didn't see being a part of my path as an adult. But man, I'm so glad I have these skills. Now, willful ignorance is different. So you might have, let's put it within a context. So you might have a relationship, and maybe your parents always did your laundry, or they always cleaned up after you, or they always put gasoline in your car, or they made your appointments and made sure your, warrant of fitness or whatever is always up to date. And they did certain things for you, but you refuse as an adult to learn them for yourself. And so that burden becomes your partner's responsibility, and before you know it, they are doing so much that they're starting to burn out. And it's because you refuse to learn how to do the laundry, you refuse to learn how to do the dishes. That's willful ignorance. And then you can't just claim, oh, well, I don't know how. Well, learn how. That's willful ignorance. And then that's when it can become problematic. And it goes from the very small things of just being able to take care of yourself and take care of another person, help take care of children if you so choose to have them. You're going to constantly need to be learning new skills. And especially, even financially, it can impact you as well. So if you don't know how to cook, let me tell you what, I have been a cooking teacher. I have taught people on video chat how to cook. I teach my friends how to cook. I'm always making new recipes. I'm currently working on a cookbook for people with ADHD and people on the spectrum and with different disabilities to simplify cooking in a way that is easy to consume, with a very special formula that I've been working on for years. So being able to have the opportunity to learn is a very important thing, but cooking is one of those things where you can save so much money by learning how to cook from scratch and learning how to buy from bulk. Because you got to think, well, what is cooking? It's not just here are the ingredients, now cook something with it. It's about learning about what is on sale at the store. How do we buy in bulk? How do we store properly the things we buy in bulk? How do we freeze? How do we dehydrate? How do we can stuff by putting it in jars? How do we, build up a pantry? A lot of people don't even know how to build up their pantry. And then when you start looking around, well, we have to go based off of what's on sale, what we currently have, what is fresh, what is seasonal. Using these things around us, what can we, get locally? What can we barter for? To be able to have a well-stocked pantry, freezers, all of that, in order to make food as cheap as you possibly can, that is a lot of things to learn. But once you get going, you'll find every day you find new ways to save money. And then before you know it, your grocery bill's much lower. And before you know it, you're prepared if there is, if there's a huge storm, if there's a hurricane, if there's a tornado, if there's an earthquake, you know that at least no matter what happens, you have food to feed your family. And you also get to save a lot of money. So always learning new skills is very, very important, and I cannot stress that enough. But that's the difference between ignorance and willful ignorance. Willful ignorance is, I don't want to learn that. And for some people, it is about belief systems. And the idea of contradicting hardcore beliefs in our system, it literally can make people become violent. It can cause a lot of aggression because because they can't accept what reality is. And when you start to have belief systems that cause you to go, okay, actually I refuse to be checked. I refuse to do my own research. I refuse to participate in a conversation with somebody with an opposing opinion. That's when it starts to become a problem on a much greater level as well. I think that for some people, ignorance, they say ignorance is bliss, and I do think that's true, but you also have to think about what you're adding to it. I knew someone who said that, every time it was an election, they would always vote, and they would vote pretty much based off of what their friends were voting for, or they would vote based off of, just little bits and pieces that they would hear over time, but they never really did their own research. They didn't really know who they were voting for, but they would always vote. And when I asked them why they voted, they would go, oh, they say if you don't vote, you can't complain. And I said, if you're not going to take the time to educate yourself, if you're not going to do your own research, if you're not going to be a part of political conversations because you mentally cannot handle it, it is too much to add to your plate, along with all of the things happening in your life, and you're still trying to process through severe trauma, or maybe you're currently stuck in a traumatic situation, I wouldn't expect you to sit down and do all of that extra work, because it's not something that's going to fit on your plate right now. You're trying to survive through chaos. Outside of your own home, your own life, your own little world, you do not have the capacity to do that. I don't expect you to do that. But then when you make a decision that's going to affect everybody else, that's when it becomes a problem. So I would much prefer someone say, you know what, I do not have the capacity for this, so I'm not going to participate in this. And if someone tells you you can't complain, honey, you can always complain. The complaint police are not going to come to your house and say, hey, you better shut up, you're not allowed to complain. That's not going to happen. So either go ahead, educate yourself, do the research, or if you do not have the capacity for that, it's okay. You can step back and go, you know what? This is not something I can partake in, and there is nothing wrong with that. If I invite you to my house to come make sourdough and you don't know how to make sourdough, you don't have to help make the sourdough. You can sit and you can watch and you can still complain that the bread sucks.
I agree with
Some
this.
people don't like sourdough.
Now the thing is that's I'm also thinking about is you mentioned when it starts to affect others, when you're making decisions that requires knowledge that affects others, then it becomes a problem, and I agree. But it also leads to one other thing too, how people don't want to step out. Willful ignorance also stems, and I think you kind of touched on this too, stems from also not wanting to step outside of your comfort zone. People would rather just believe the knowledge that they've been fed for the majority of their life and not question it. Just takes too much effort, and not to mention it is a scary thing. It is a scary thing. I will bring up the fact that I've had some strifes with my in-laws because they're Catholic. They've been Catholic. Well, at least my mother-in-law's been Catholic all her life, I think, and she wanted me to become Catholic, which I refused to because I don't agree with the Catholic doctrine. Now, that's nothing against you, any Catholics that are listening, so I'm not saying this to offend any of you, but the fact of the matter is, I am the type of person that if I agree with something, I'll be a part of it. So if I'm not a part of it, there's a reason for it. And but there's been kind of some friction between me and my in-laws because I'm not Catholic, they are, and it doesn't matter. And to some Catholics, not all Catholics, but there are quite a few Catholics out there that believe it doesn't matter how close you feel you are to God. It doesn't matter how sincere your desire is to follow after Him. If you're not Catholic, it doesn't cut it, and that's how it is. But when I try to explain to them
All
why
of it.
I'm not, I'll even use biblical scripture to back up my beliefs. But because it goes against the Catholic faith, they don't want to hear it. They push away from it. Because like she'll say, well, like for example, some of the priests got offended because I refused to call them father when they were around. Like, well, why don't you call them father out of respect? I'm like, because there's a scripture that says, Jesus says, called no man on the earth father, for there's only one father, which is in heaven. And they're like, yeah, but you should still do it out of respect. I'm like, well, if the church corners you to where you have to either respect them or respect God, but can't do both, it should be a no-brainer which one comes first then in terms of respect. But they don't want to hear it. That's a example of religious willful ignorance. But it can also be carried
Well,
on to politics and stuff like that too.
well, religion is one of those things where I think if you start, and this is what I encourage everyone to do, grow your circle. Grow your circle. Now you need to find, and this is the thing, not everybody in life is meant to be your friend, but it doesn't mean that they can't sit and have a meal with you. You don't have to always be friends. What you can be is people who know each other and who discuss things and who enjoy the time you spend together, but your morals and your beliefs do not align. So
Now,
maybe you're not going to be best friends, but they can still be a part of your society around you.
now I would like to clarify that while that friction might still be there, it's not like I'm enemies with my in-laws. I do I get along with them now. Because things were pretty rough in the beginning, but I think they've adjusted to the type of person I am, thankfully. That makes life a little easier.
Cool.
And but I'm just but the point I was trying to get to is I can understand why they are so they're not receptive, because when the fact of the matter is, when you grow up with a specific faith all your life, and then you're being told things that causes your mind to consider, well, maybe we weren't on the right track after all. That's a very scary thought. That is a very scary thought. I don't blame them for feeling uncomfortable about that. So yes, in that sense, I do understand the whole willful ignorance thing, because you're good because to not be willfully ignorant, you'd have to consider maybe your own views, maybe your own ways are not correct. And I've done that with myself. And in fact, I better do that with myself, because if I don't, I'm a hypocrite, because here I am inspiring others to try to do that. And if I myself am not willing to do that, well, shame on me then. Oh, and we
Yeah,
got oh,
bad.
huh?
Well, educating yourself on other people's belief systems is not a bad thing. Questioning your own belief system is not a bad thing.
Exactly.
And respect is a very fickle word, because your definition of respect and my definition of respect might mean two completely different things. So I always tell people, try to avoid words like, hey, that's disrespectful, because you also have to counter in different families, different homes, different cultures, different countries. Respect can mean something completely different.
Now, the before we continue on, I do apologize again to you, Liv, because there was something I said I was going to do after the 10-minute mark, but we got so into this, we passed by it. And that is, Liv wants to for us to do a is it a giveaway, you say it was? Would you like to explain the details of what it is you would like to do with for the viewers?
Yeah, so check it out, everybody. We are going to be doing an awesome giveaway. Yeah, I'm going to use my giveaway voice. So what we're is I want you to fire as many colorful heart emojis. Do like 5, okay? Just do a few heart emojis, send them into the comments, and then at the end of the podcast, Statton's going to take all of the names, pick one at random, and we are going to be giving away a certificate for one free consultation session with my brand new Tree of Life, and 3 counseling sessions. So that is an entire month worth of sessions, and we're going to give that away to somebody for them to either use for themselves or give to somebody that they love or care about, who has been wanting to have someone to talk to and has not had that opportunity or hasn't had the finances to be able to do so. And it's something very special that my company wanted to be able to do, to be able to give back and help more people out. So, and a giveaway sounded fun, and hey, check it, I'm on a podcast. So fire those heart emojis down below, and your name will go into win. And then within the next few days, we're going to get a certificate to you that you can cash in.
Now, this takes us to the other stepping stone of the subject at hand. Because we want to be in our comfort zone so much, it's actually increased us sensitivity wise, to where we are now way too easily offended. I mean, and like, for example, I will just flat out say it. I'm pretty sure all of you are smart enough to have figured this out by now. Or actually, I think all of you are smart enough to have figured this out a long time ago, in fact. But I am a conservative person. I'm very conservative in beliefs and values. But when it comes to politics and everything, oh, because we speak against, I wouldn't say we necessarily speak against all liberals or the left, but we do speak against the radical left, as we put it, because I believe that there are 3 categories of every political party. Like, they're rare, but there are such a thing as liberal Republicans and conservative Democrats. They do exist, believe it or not. And but then you got the extremist on both sides. Now, I'm not one of those extremists on the Republican side, but I am registered Republican. I am conservative in values. But people like me, because of the things we believe, we're often called Nazis, haters, bigots. It's like, why? Well, because you disagree with us, so that makes you a hater. It's like that's just so ridiculous. And people, I mean, seriously, we just because I speak again, I don't agree with you doesn't mean I hate you. And doesn't mean I'm attacking you. And there's absolutely no reason for you to be offended. And I'll explain to you why you shouldn't be offended. I mean, there are things that are worth being offended over. Don't get me wrong. This isn't one of them. And the reason is, if, in the end, if I speak against something you believe in, guess what? You still get to live out your days doing the very thing I disagree with. My words don't magically stop you. And if they don't magically stop you, my words, whether if they agree or disagree with you, have absolutely no effect on you. So if you don't like hearing it, you could always move on to a different stream or a different video, or move on to listening to a group that does affirm your beliefs and not say, well, I disagree with that and I don't think this is necessarily the right way. So if you have that knowledge, if you know my words don't stop you, if you know my words don't magically make it so you have to change, and yet that you can move on to a different group and you're offended anyways, that's on you, because you're choosing to be offended over something that, quite frankly, is silly to be offended about. There are things that are worth being offended over, bigger things, much bigger things that do affect you. But hearing people that have beliefs that differ from yours isn't one of them. Now, Liv, if you agree or disagree with me, I'm willing to listen either way. Don't hold back on this.
That everybody is dealing with their own life. And that's where I'm going to start it, is everybody is dealing with their own life. And we do not know what that person is personally dealing with unless we talk to them. And I even find with my clients, we can be discussing, certain things in their life, but I can see there's something deeper there. And I can go, you know what? I think there's something deeper that you want to talk about, and maybe you don't even realize that you want to talk about it. So I'm going to ask some questions, and we're going to see if we can't figure out what's causing these intense feelings for you, because something there is something we need to talk about that we need to process, so let's work through it. And then I find most of the time that it's true, there is. So because we don't know what issues this person is dealing with, it can mean that they might not have the capacity, they might not be in a space currently where they can discuss certain subjects at that time. It's no different than when me and my partner go to bed at night. We have a strict rule, which is we do not discuss finances an hour before bed, because I'll be thinking about it all night and it'll drive me absolutely insane. By the end of the day, I do not have the capacity for that anymore. But there are things I do have the capacity for, which is, what are we going to make for dinner the next day? Or, hey, did we hang up that laundry? Like, there's conversations that can be had, but there's more stressful ones where it's actually, no, I don't have the capacity for this right now. So it's also about respecting, there's a time and a place for everything, but this might not be the time and this might not be the place. So you have to be able to meet people in a space where they're able to do that, where they're able to have that conversation. And with as crazy as life is for a lot of people, there could be way more demanding things in their life that they just do not have the extra room to deal with XYZ subject, just because somebody else wants to talk about it or have a debate about it or anything else. Now, I will have conversations, I'll have debates, I'll have whatever. You can have any belief system. You can be a part of any religion. You can be a part of, any group or whatever. It does not matter. What matters to me is, can we sit down and can we have a conversation together? Can we discuss our differences so we can figure out what do we have in common? What do we disagree about? Iron sharpens iron. I want to be as intelligent as I can be. I want to be able to do as much as I possibly can do. And to be able to reach my goals means that I have to be able to sit there and listen to somebody, even if I believe they're wrong, and have a respectful conversation. Now, when I say a respectful conversation, we have to identify what do we mean by respect. So earlier you mentioned, do you call somebody father who that's a part of their title? Would you bow to a king or queen if they're not your king or queen? What would you do? What does respect mean? And to me, respect is I will treat you like I would treat any other human being on this earth, no better and no worse. You will be treated as a human being whose life is sacred. That is it. Because life is worth protecting, and I think that you are a beautiful individual and your life matters to me. So I will treat you as a human being equal to me. I will not treat you better. I will not treat you worse. That is what respect is. Anything else is just opinions, traditions, or entitlements. And I don't believe that anybody you don't get to demand those things out of other people. So instead, what I'm going to say is you're a human being, I'm a human being, and we are equal to each other. So that's my perspective of what respect actually means. So if you can do it respectfully, wonderful. But if you can't do it respectfully, and that was also something I've seen a lot, where people try to debate these subjects and they try to have the conversation, it's not a conversation. It's barely a debate. It's mostly two people hurling insults at each other because they want to win the argument. Who wins when you win an argument? Because it's not you, it's not them, and nothing productive happened. Nobody ends up better for it.
Not to mention define winning, because if both people go through it and they both part ways, still each one still believing what they originally believed before, there is no victory. And in fact, and it's not and it shouldn't be like you said, it shouldn't be about one winning over the other. I mean, it should be about simply listening and learning, and if you disagree, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, do you know how many YouTube videos I'll intentionally listen to that go against the Christian faith? And I do it to learn. I mean, I don't agree with it, but I still learn something. I learn where they're coming from. I learn why they are saying what they're saying. And I'll intentionally look up videos where even atheists will ask biblical questions that actually seem harsh on the surface, but when you stop to think about it, like, you know what? These questions, they actually need to be asked, and we should be willing to answer. There was actually someone, and don't worry, guys, I'm not going to turn this into one big religious thing, because I think that'd be a bit much for you viewers. But at the same time, you know that I'm a pastor by now. I revealed that a long time ago, and this is one of the favorite subjects. And I even had this discussion that if there ever came a time where we started discussing biblical stuff, I'd say let's go for it, because after all, I don't silence anybody else, so I refuse for us to be silenced on our beliefs. And that is the fact one of the harshest or most bold subjects was the discussion of circumcision, and how circumcision was supposed to be a mark that separated the people of Israel from the rest of the world. Well, someone asked me, okay, then why, if it's supposed to be a mark, then why did God choose such a suggestive place for that mark to be put on? Now that sounds like they're mocking the belief on the surface, but I didn't interpret it as such. And I don't think they were. I think they were actually being serious. And as awkward of a conversation that is, questions like that do need to be asked, and they do need to be considered and thought about. I think one of the reasons that it happens, that was chosen, was because it's a mark that's between you and God alone, and it's something that people can't see. For example, if you go out in public and you start walking around, you see all these clothed individuals. You're not going to be able to point out the individuals and say, well, this person's circumcised, this person is, and that person, well, they're not. Well, how can you tell? They're clothed. The mark is covered. And there's actually a spiritual meaning behind that. When God touches your heart, there's a mark in your heart that only you and God can see, and nobody else can. You can't go out in public and say, oh, yes, God is working in this person just by their appearance alone. It's what they do that makes it known. Now, Liv, I lost my train of thought. Where was I? Why did I start off talking? Oh, yes. Uh, um, the fact of the matter is, we need to step outside of our comfort zone and be willing to consider these type of questions, not just in the religious sense, but political too. And we have to understand not to be so easily offended by things. Just, you got to be willing to learn, but part of learning is listening to what other people say. I listen to videos where people attack Christianity. I even listen to videos where people attack the very denomination I'm a part of. I'm a primitive Baptist. That's one of the smallest denominations in all of Christianity. Even most of Christianity doesn't agree with it because of our doctrine beliefs. So be it. I still believe it's accurate, and I take no offense over the fact that it is rejected by the majority of the world. It is what it is. I am willing to listen to other people.
I think you can actually take it to a much smaller place. And I think that's where the conversation has to start, is in a smaller place. Because people need to see what exactly you're talking about in something that's a little easier to understand than maybe the broader aspects of politics and religion, even though it can be applied to those things. I think it's a little easier with more specific context. So I have a great example of this. I knew somebody, and they were severely struggling to be able to maintain their space. So their home was they were having a really hard time keeping it organized. And I suggested to them, okay, well, why are the clothes on the floor? Why is it that we can't, clean up after ourselves? What is the cause of these things? And, they would give like an excuse here, an excuse there of, well, the laundry hamper's broken and things like that. And I was like, okay, well, we'll get a new laundry hamper. And then, they started getting a bit frustrated. I said, maybe we just need to reorganize everything. And then immediately they got very upset. It is organized. I have organized it. It looks fine right now. And I said, well, yeah, but is it functional for you? Is it functional for you? And even just the idea of, it's not organized, but they've organized it. That was a belief that they had, which is they had organized it, and they had, but they hadn't organized it in a way that was functional for them. They organized it in a very stereotypical way. And this is what I tell everybody. I don't care if your clothes are in a closet on hangers. I don't care if your clothes are folded and put in a drawer. I don't care if you have 3 separate tubs and you have one for t-shirts, one for pants, and then one for other things, and then your nicer stuff's hung up because you don't want it to get messed up. But your regular sweatpants and stuff are just kind of separated into different bins. I don't care how it's organized, but it needs to be functional for you. And for some people, if they cannot see everything that they own, they forget it exists. And then their wardrobe starts to become very limited because they forgot that things existed because they can't see them. Everybody has their own disabilities, their own problems. It has to be functional for you. But even just suggesting that maybe they needed to reorganize again was insulting to them, because how dare you say that I haven't organized? I have not said you have not organized. Have you organized in a way that's functional for you, even if it's not stereotypical? And I think that's where we can bring the conversation back down to something smaller. If you wake up and for the last 10 years you have, had the exact same brand of peanut butter, but then I tell you, oh, actually homemade peanut butter is so much better, but you won't even taste it. to just see if maybe I'm right. Maybe you're right, and that brand of peanut butter you've bought for 10 years is the best brand and you love it and you think it tastes better. Okay, great. But if you can make it yourself for cheaper and it tastes just as good, if not better, and you won't even give it a try, you got to give it a try. It's hearing the other person out. And even at the end, if you have to walk away going, you know what, I'm happy that you're happy, that's at least a better leaving place than it is to just go, you know what, I don't want to hear anything else.
And now that we're once again a little late, but then again, we've had a few disruptions getting this episode kicked off. Normally at the halfway point, I would open this up for any viewers to step into the VC chat. I got it set up to where anyone can step up one at a time. If you're in my Discord server, all you gotta do is step into the VC, and you're free to put in your thoughts, your opinions, and even if you have any questions, feel free to do so. It can be anything, and it can be whether if you agree or disagree. And if you're not in my server, well, it's easy to get into my server. All you gotta do is go to the link, or go to the description of my videos and everything. I leave a link to my Discord server in the description of my videos. So we'll open that up for about 10 minutes. And we'll just go from there. And while we wait, I'll open up to the advertisements. Now, Liv, do you want to advertise your new Tree of Life thing in this section of the video? Even though technically we did talk about it, but if there's anything more you want to add to it.
Sure. So, as you know, my name is Olivia Bensberg. I like to go by Liv. It's what I prefer. And I work with people to help them gain quality of life. So to me, there's a lot of things you can do to help somebody. We try to go from a holistic approach, which I think is very important, and it tends to be a little bit more financially accessible for people. We have a lovely, amazing charity where we raise funds to be able to work for people with little to no cost to them, which I think is wonderful. We are a non-government funded business, and the reason we wanted to be that way is we didn't want to be restricted in any way. Not everybody fits the same mold that everybody else fits in, and sometimes you have to work a little unconventionally, and we want to be able to offer services that actually work. We don't want you to be stuck with sessions like a ball and chain where you have to come back every week and it starts having an effect on your finances. We want to get you to a point where you can take the skills and the tools, apply them to your own life, and then be able to reach success and apply it to other parts of your life as you grow, so you're independent and you can fly away, little bird. That's what we want. It's not supposed to be a place you stay forever. It is a temporary rest stop to help fuel you to your future destinations. And I'm very proud of the work we do, and it's really wonderful. And I'm very proud that New Tree of Life is such an open place for people, because we have clients who are Muslim, we have clients who are Christians, we have atheists, we have gang members, we have everybody is welcome here. We work with adults, we work with children. Everybody is always welcome to come here, and the only thing that is required is for you to just say, I need some help, and you have a safe place where you can come just as you are, and we are more than willing to do anything we can do to help you reach quality of life.
Awesome. Also, I would like to mention that this is also brought to you by Alderon's YouTube gaming channel. He has a channel also on YouTube. He plays games I haven't gotten into. So, Alderon, even though you couldn't be a part of today's podcast, I would still like to advertise your stuff and check out his stuff. And if you like it, subscribe. Also, feel free to come to my Discord server called Statton's Mansion. I leave a link to it in the description of all my videos, and I leave a link to my Venmo account for optional donations. Donations are not required, but they are appreciated, and they make it so we are not also restricted in the things that we say in the podcast. Now, Liv, Now, normally as of yet, since the podcast is still kind of young, so we don't get a lot of viewers during the time that we live stream, but the views do climb up once the stream is converted into a video and posted. So would you like us to carry on your idea of the free giveaway, or the giveaway thing, to when people watch later and post in the comment
Many
section?
people offer the opportunity to as many people as possible, and you can pick somebody at the end of the week. How about that?
Understood. We can do just that then. And I guess that's it. Now, I'm going to throw myself under the bus here and ask you, Liv, in front of the viewers before we wrap up. Do you think I'm too harsh in how I encounter these subjects, or that I need to take a step back in how I go about these things?
Okay, so I think when it comes to creating content, and I'm not speaking as a counselor or a life coach or a quality of life specialist, I am speaking as somebody with experience in the media and entertainment and radio. If there is anything I would critique, I think maybe you could segue from one subject into another a little bit more smoothly. Because I wasn't quite ready when you just like threw down circumcision. I was like, oh, okay, so we're gonna hit on that real quick.
Well,
We can discuss that.
that originally wasn't planned. I don't know. I that was just like an example that popped in my head because we were talking about some very hard, awkward subjects. Like, well, these are things that like, I'm not afraid when people ask me those type of questions. I don't feel awkward. When people ask me those questions, it's not like a comedy where I'm just like, does anyone want to help me out here? It's like, no, it's like you ask me these questions, like, either I explain to the best of my ability, or I just admit, hey, this is something I don't know right now, but I am gonna look into it because I think these are things that we need to know.
As far as being harsh, I don't think you're a harsh individual. I think that you care a lot about people, and that's very apparent. I think there's just it's not really so much about harshness as much as it's about just tackling conversations delicately, especially if we're not going to talk about them in depth. Because we can reference something, and I think that's wonderful because sometimes you need an example, but we have to be very careful when we pick our examples that they're not too vague, or that it's not too big of a conversation within the amount of time that we have, so that the conversation can be as productive as possible. And I think that you'd work really hard on your podcast and in life and with your friends to be able to allow anybody a place at the table and to be a part of the discussion. And you don't start the conversation intending to offend. You start the conversation with the intention of sharing and understanding. And I think that's beautiful.
Thank you. So you don't think what I did is like damaging the podcast beyond repair or anything, since like you said, I do need to work on the smoothness of it, which, yeah, I do agree. I guess part of my problem is I don't I do plan in the sense of studying the subjects, don't plan so much as to what pops in my head, like, oh, this is a subject that needs to be an example wise. You know what I mean? So you don't think that's I damaged or ruined this for the future then?
No, I don't think you can be ruined by just having a conversation. I think it's about creating something that's palatable for your intended audience, and I think you do a pretty great job of that. And if somebody doesn't like something, then there are alternatives that they can participate in. But I would hope that instead they would take that passion and they would put it in the comment section, and they would try to have a conversation with you, because that's how the world gets better. It's the same thing like a family, and that's what I'm always trying to do, is I'm trying to make these into a context that people can understand. So if you have a family, let's take it outside of the world, let's take it outside of our nation, let's take it let's take it right back down to just the home. Let's say you have a home, there's a mom, there's a dad, there's, a couple of kids running around, there's some grandparents. There's healthy dynamics and there's poor dynamics. And it's a pretty poor dynamic when your house, no one apologizes. If no one ever apologizes, even when they've hurt each other or there have been problems, if nobody ever apologizes, it's a little bit harder to start the healing process. It's a little bit more difficult to have close relationships where you actually can talk about things that are uncomfortable when everyone's being offended. I think one of the marks of a great parent is somebody who's willing to apologize to their child when they've done something wrong, even if they thought in the moment that it was the right thing to do. And there's no such thing as a perfect parent. A perfect parent is just somebody who's trying their best. That's what I genuinely believe. Um, so I think it's wonderful when parents can apologize. I think it's wonderful when siblings can see that and then learn how to build those relationships up properly. And when you have a household where people can't communicate, where they can't share their feelings, where they don't feel safe to have a conversation, that's when we start seeing the deterioration within that family unit. And that's where we get a lot of broken families from. And when you have parents that are not setting an example for how relationships should go, because seeing, your parents' relationship and how they function together is a child's first example of what relationships are meant to look like. So when parents are so dysfunctional and they can't get along, then you're teaching your child, well, this is how relationships work. It's two people butting heads constantly and nothing is resolved. So it's wonderful to have conversations. It's wonderful to apologize when we're wrong. It's wonderful to be happy for somebody, even if they're doing something that we don't particularly agree with, but we can be happy that they're happy. Because at the end of the day, you have to value the person more than anything else, because they matter and you want to have that relationship. And sometimes families are too dysfunctional and people can't be lifelong friends, or they can't continue to have a relationship, and that's quite sad. So if we take it outside and just put it into a house, a home without communication and without loving, kind communication, by the way, I need to add, take the word respect out of it. Let's go for loving, let's go for kind, because those are simpler definitions in my book. Well, in that case, if you don't have that, then the relationships deteriorate and the home starts to crumble around us, and that is not a good thing. So communication is a very beautiful thing, and a lot of people were not taught how to properly communicate, and so we have to exercise more patience, more kindness, more loving words, and try for things to not be an argument. And it took me a long time to learn how to not argue with my partner. I had to learn how to lovingly communicate. And it's not that my parents didn't set a great example, they did, but you still have to learn how to actively participate in that as an adult. And it took a while, but we do it now, and I can tell you right now, there is no fighting in my home.
That is awesome to hear. Well, guys, I think this is time for us to wrap up the podcast. I thank you all for listening, and if you weren't here for the live, I appreciate you watching this later on. Anyways, Liv, thank you for being a part of this one. As I've said many times, and it cannot be said too many, I look forward to having you around in the future. You are an awesome person. Anyways, my name is Statton. Like, share, and subscribe. And you all have yourselves a wonderful day. And remember, you are not